And we are live. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is CapitalCosm Live. My name is Danny, and it is June 12th, 2025. I know we pushed out an episode today, but obviously, this is an emergency update. Israel has attacked Iran, and I'm here today with former PMC analyst and intelligence analyst, George. We've had George on the show before to much positive acclaim. So I'm happy to have George on. Thank you, George, for coming on such quick notice.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I did some shows about this with Stuart Turley in the beginning of the year. I'm trying to find the slide set real quick, because what's critical to know is where the oil fields are and what the ethnic maps.
Okay.
Because you got the Fars in the middle, the Lurs on the Iraqi border, but you also got the Kurds and the Azeris on the northeast, the northwest side, and the Baluch in the southeast. And the different communities have been very active in trying to get them to topple the government. And then you got pipeline routes and international north-south trade corridor going back and forth. So there's a lot of proxy wars going on between everybody in Eurasia.
And I bet they're all chomping at the bit to see any sign of weakness of the Iranian regime to come sweep on in. But before we get started with all of that, guys, I want to remind you, this is a live stream. So liking, commenting in the chat, that all helps in getting this video boosted in the algorithm so more people can view us. So if you wouldn't mind smashing that like button, commenting in the chat, let me know if you can hear my voice. Let me know if the audio is coming in fine. Give me a 1 in the chat if you can hear us just fine. We're going to take a look at some clips that I've got together for those who may not be privy to, may not have become aware to all the happenings. Here are some clips as to what we've seen transpire so far. These are pretty wild, I'm not going to lie. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first one here. This is Israel rockets exploding in Iran. Let's see what we got here. So here are the rockets, and you and I covered this, George, privately, but it doesn't appear like they hit. It appears to be a targeted assassination attempt. So they're hitting residential buildings. They hit some nuclear sites. You can see the rockets there. Here's some more angles. Another explosion. So this was not some Mickey Mouse theatrical thing. I mean, this was a legit punch to the mouth on the part of Israel to Iran. This is CNN. CNN reports that all of Iran's general staff, including the head of the military, were killed tonight in the strikes by Israel. Iran Observer reports the headquarters of IRG General Command in Tehran was struck. So let's go ahead and see what CNN has to say.
No sound.
Was that not coming through?
No, I didn't hear it.
Okay, let me do something else then.
Is it coming through on the chat?
Hey, chat, can you hear? Oh, it says no sound. Okay, let me redo this. But your take so far here, George, while I get everything else set up, redone.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just trying to bring up my map so people can get a visual about what I'm talking about.
Yeah, go ahead. If you already have it up, go ahead and pull it up.
Yeah, go ahead and do. I'll talk while you're doing that. What we were talking about last time when I was on was really the West is going broke and really needs the oil and natural gas assets, reserves in that area. Plus, they need the land bridge routes back to Europe before Europe completely deindustrializes. We didn't. We went over a lot of stuff that's an hour and a half, and I got slide sets that are hundreds of pages long. So there's a lot of nuance in what I was talking about that didn't come through it. We could only hit just a very, very major points in the last time I was on. But yeah, they need to take over the assets and put the commodities through the different industrial systems so the banking community gets its bite out of every little transaction as it goes through the system. That's how the government gets taxes, but that's how the elite get rich. When the elites use the military because it's ultimately the banking centers that decide these wars. It's been that way since the British East India days and the Dutch East India days. It's just always been like that. For people that are familiar with the Dulles brothers and Sullivan and Cromwell and Averell Harriman and Brown Brothers Harriman, it's just the way it is. Yeah, the interface between the Ivy League grand strategists, the Ivy League business school people, they meet in conferences, but ultimately it's the Fortune 500 companies and the financial companies that have the most PhD economists. They send them to the Yale and Harvard grand strategies courses. Zbigniew Brzezinski went to them because Kissinger. That's where the real decisions are being made. They have a whole bunch of groups where they interface. That the Council of Foreign Relations is out there, WEF, obviously. So these decisions are really made in that level, and then they pay the think tanks to then lobby Congress and get laws done in their favors. Okay, so that's how they have access to the various governmental organizations through those processes. So if the West is going broke and they can't afford their welfare states anymore, they need to cycle those commodities through. They've been talking about, Iran is going to get nukes any day now for, I don't know, since I've been an adult, right? I mean, going back for decades.
Since the 90s, early 90s.
Yeah, it's so, and they've had the inspectors over there, and they were only enriching for a few percentage, and then they started bumping it up to 20% in the past few years. But they're still far away from the 90 some odd percent that you need. But they keep on talking about the need to attack them before they get their nuclear sites going. All right. Well, what's the problem with that? They're attacking Iran, and they're attacking Tehran nowhere near the nuclear sites. I'm trying to get a map up of the nuclear sites because this has been going on for a while. I did a slide set before, but yeah, if you need Alistair Crook, who's I think is the most knowledgeable person on the Middle East. I've been following his stuff for last decade and a half. He's a double retired MI6 guy. Then he went to go work for the UN Intel, and then he started his own company out of Beirut. I think it's conflict something or other. Okay. Anyway, he was on Judge Napolitano today, and he's talking about the nuclear sites in the Isfahan area are almost about a kilometer deep underneath the ground.
Right.
So you have to hit it with the bunker buster bombs repeatedly in the same spot. Like a woodpecker.
What about like the strikes that they used to kill the Hezbollah chief Nasrallah?
Oh, he was in a residence. That's what they're doing today. Yeah, he's in a residence.
So those bunker buster missiles wouldn't suffice to take down their facilities underground.
Well, they would have to hit them with repeated strikes, and then you need an aircraft big enough to take them, and Israel doesn't have that. They have fast fighter jets and stuff. They don't have B-2s and B-1s and things like that. B-52s can of course handle it, but then they're not a stealth bird, so you can't use JDAMs for that. But they're not targeting the IADS and IADS, integrated air defense systems, and the surface to air missiles. They're not targeting those sites as much. They're targeting residential in the Tehran area, and they can do that with the F-35s that they got.
Okay, so, breaking news. Sorry to interrupt you, George. Breaking news. A ground stop has been issued due to a security incident that has occurred at George Bush Intercontinental Airport. This is in Houston, Texas. It says a ground stop has been issued at Houston's George Bush Intercontinental Airport following reports of an unspecified security threat. All inbound and outbound flights have been ordered to a halt, and emergency response teams are currently on the scene, though the exact nature of the threat remains unclear. So is this, do you anticipate this being connected, or is this just a coincidence?
Oh, there's so many millions of people that came in over the border. You interviewed Michael Yon a couple of months ago. I've been down to the Darien a couple of times with him down in Panama. Yeah, there's just millions of people coming through the border. The population of the Latin American countries been doubling every 25, 30 years since 1900. So we've been getting the high percentages of their doublings for the last couple of decades. But within the past few years, Mexico, if everybody stayed in Mexico and it doubled every 30 years, they would have about 180 million people living in Mexico. Back when my professor in 1990 was talking about this. Well, the thing is, if you look at their demographics, they estimate there's about 130, 140 million. So it just begs the question, where did the other 40 million go? Well, they're over here.
40 million.
Right. So then you're talking about, I was at a conference in 2006, Eastern Economics Conference, Pennsylvania Economics Conference. We were talking about George Bush's 43's job growth numbers. And somebody asked, we're literally sitting at a round table. They asked what the numbers were. And this was kind of a little bit of a long story, but it's very telling. They asked people what they thought of the job growth numbers, and people kind of had some basic answers. I don't know, 3-4% is okay. Well, whatever, that's all right. When it came back to me, I said, well, George Bush, the debate is whether at that time there was 11 million, that's the number that the left always says, or closer to 40 million at that time. At that time, I said, it's got to be closer to 40 million because look at all the Hispanic radio stations that just popped up everywhere. That, and I drive a lot, and they're in the country. So they're not migrating back. I said, the Bush's job growth numbers were mostly in the housing sector, which is notorious for hiring illegal aliens. So they don't know, Bureau of Labor Statistics isn't going to count that because it's the underground economy. I said, George Bush's job growth numbers could have been 2 or 3 times the official number, and there's no way that DOL, BLS would know that.
Do you think the LA riots are connected to this somehow? Because they did start like literally days before this strike. I mean, is there a connection here or no?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, Michael Yon, I talk about it all the time. Yeah, these different NGOs.
What's the connection to the Iran war?
Yeah, well, there's tons of people from the Middle East coming over here. Especially after the collapse of Afghanistan. Yeah, there's people from every Middle Eastern country around, coming over here. So of course they would be one would have to think that they would be slipping, their spies or insurgents in. I mean, that would be, do you know that? Well, I don't really know who exactly is a spy because they're undercover, but you would have to think that they would be taking advantage of the open border situation. I mean,
these LA riots are probably funded by some sort of foreign intelligence agencies. Would that be, would that be plausible?
They're funded by a lot of globalist agencies who work a lot with the VEOs, the violent extremist organizations.
Okay.
Which is a whole, Mike Benz talks about that the most. Brian Berletic on his show talks about NED and USAID. But yeah, I mean, we do security for all these NGOs all over the world. After a while, you kind of catch on to what they do. Yeah, the population growth for the world has been J-curving. It went from 1 billion people in 1804 to 8 billion people, shortly after 2000. Most of them are in Africa, South Asia, and South Latin America. So yeah, they're shifting north.
Gotcha. So breaking another piece of breaking news here. It says Israeli army radio citing a Mossad source. The list of assassinated leaders is long and unprecedented. So I think we've got the video here ready. And lined up. So let's go ahead and listen to this really quick. I know it's CNN, but there's always some nuggets that we could pull out here.
First, Caitlin, something I just heard from a senior Israeli official who says that according to Israeli assessments, there are very high chances that the entire Iranian general staff, including the head of the Iranian general staff of the Iranian military, and several senior Iranian nuclear scientists were all eliminated in the Israeli strikes tonight. I hear that again from a senior Israeli official who says that several senior top Iranian military commanders, including the head of the general staff of the Iranian military and senior nuclear scientists, have all been targeted in those strikes. And according to IDF assessments, there's a high chance that they've been eliminated.
I mean, that is really striking intelligence, if that is accurate.
Yeah, really striking. No pun intended. How does Iran respond to this in your opinion, in your view here, George? What's Iran most likely next course of action?
The most critical thing that they could do is shut down the Strait of Hormuz, because then you're blocking Iraqi oil from hitting the market, Kuwaiti oil, Saudi Arabia. Hold on a second. Yeah. All right. I just had to read it. I just got a message popped up from somebody. But yeah, so all the oil. So you got Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Qatar. All that oil wouldn't leave. If that were to happen, oil goes to $200 a barrel. But most importantly, no oil would go to Japan, or very little. They have a huge restriction in Japan and South Korea, who are already having economic problems. So at that point, the goal is to get them to start buying more and more Russian oil and then leave the petrodollar. So there's all these things in play. You know, something happens in one area of Eurasia, but you're talking about the asymmetrical response will be in a completely different part of Eurasia in a completely different domain. So like what I was talking about before, the big point of China doing those joint operation exercises around Taiwan is not necessarily because they're going to invade Taiwan. It's to keep on encouraging them all to start buying Russian oil and leave the U.S. First Island Chain Alliance.
Yeah, I mean, right now, oil is spiking. We're at 73.93 WTI. We're getting close to that $74. I think we hit $74 at some point. So oil is certainly getting a bid, like you said.
Yeah. So if the goal of the Western foreign policy, you know, with the following Alex Craner says McKindrish, but it's Spikeman's Rimland theory or Kennan's industrial power center theory is what that evolved to. The the goal has been to encircle Russia, the heartland, economically strangle them, and then try to break it up into at least three or four different regions. Was what Brzezinski's strategy was. Other people try to split it up more. But if that's the goal, and then the West has bankrupted themselves in the process of doing that, well, then Russia and China's goal is then to bankrupt the West. So they're already cut off from cheap Russian natural gas, and they've been deindustrializing, with BASF being the big one. But all the auto manufacturers, with all their other problems, cannot take a spike in energy. So their play is anything that increases the energy costs for them is good, because it bankrupts the West that much faster. Meanwhile, they have plenty of oil, natural gas, and minerals there. So they can trade internally and kind of let the West collapse. Yeah, their economies collapse a little bit too, but the other ones collapse more. You know, it's a Pyrrhic victory kind of a thing.
Right. So we do have an update. It says here, breaking, according to Iranian sources, General Bagheri, who I presume is one of the top generals in the IRGC, is alive, according to Iranian sources. And we have some more footage here that we can play. Let's go ahead and tee this up. This is from the aftermath of what we just witnessed. So let's go ahead and see what happened. So yes, that was one of the residential areas that was struck just a few moments ago. Were you able to tee up your map there, George?
Oh
You
yeah.
want to share that?
Yeah. The hold on a second. Let me do. Wait.
So what? So again, how do we see this getting blown up into a full blown war? Do you anticipate, or should we anticipate like more theatrics from here on out, like we saw with True Promise 1 and True Promise 2, and the immaterial True Promise 3 from Iran?
Oh, I mean, first of all, Iran's going to regroup. Their first priority is to make sure that there's not an Azeri, Kurd, or Baluch uprising. So then,
so for people who aren't in the know, what is Baluchistan? What is? Explain who these different tribes are and why they're important.
Yeah, I'm trying to get that map right now.
Well, it says here, more breaking news. This is from CNN. I know, CNN again, but it says Iran to declare war on Israel. So it doesn't look like there's going to be any theatrics, but I'll let you continue your train of thought here, George. Go ahead.
Yeah, just, well, the goal would be, first of all, to stabilize their domestic situation. And then, and then figure out, what it is that they want to strike back. Now, since the neocons want to escalate it, their actually inclination, well, what Putin and Xi have been doing is try to de-escalate everything because time's on their side. The more that the West deindustrializes, the more Alice Weidel and Herbert Kickl rise in the poll, as well as Nigel Farage. So for them, it's to wait until they get a regime change in the West and let everything calm down, because nothing's going to calm down until the globalists are out of power. For Trump or Putin, really, it's the same group of people.
So this is all globalist driven, from the globalists from in Europe and America. This is all part of the agenda.
Oh yeah. There's a channel called Prometheus with Barbara Boyd, I think it was. She really does focus on the secret societies and MI6 connections, because they're really not so secret, because they all meet at the economics conferences, and I go to them too.
What do you do there?
I present academic papers.
Okay.
So I mean, it's where they all meet. It's secret societies.
It's an open secret, yeah.
Aren't secret at all, really. I mean, you have academic papers, they get accepted, you go there. I mean, it's in some ways it's not that big of a deal. Then there's echelons of it that are super secret, because you can't get anywhere near Davos unless you're a billionaire, right? Yeah. So, what's ultimately, Putin and Xi do not want to let Iran fall, not because they're in love with the theocracy, but that's just their southern flank. They need the oil and gas fields in not only Iran, but Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan, plus the pipeline routes, because LNG, the whole process of liquefaction, regasification, is so expensive. It's a sea power coping strategy. It's not a long-term solution for economic survival. People need to get that out of their heads. Because I posted stuff on LinkedIn and about how Germany's cut off from affordable natural gas, and people are like, we're sending them liquid, LNG, at 2 or 3 times the price. And plus the ships are backed up because they can't unload fast enough, so they can't keep up with demand. I mean, it doesn't, people don't understand it. It just doesn't work. it's no replacement for natural gas by pipeline.
Gotcha. Yeah, we have another big update. Breaking news. Iranian state television has confirmed that the country's airspace will remain closed for an undetermined period. Iranian Air Force is currently conducting emergency combat air patrol operations across key sectors. According to Iranian security sources, a retaliatory response is expected to begin, wait for it, within hours. So by the time we go to sleep, we may wake up to a retaliation from Iran. And it says it will be, quote, harsh and decisive. So it doesn't sound like it's going to be another true promise 1 or 2. This does seem like the big one here. Thoughts on this, George?
Yeah. Go ahead, because I'm trying to get I got to log in. I thought I could just post my slide sets up, but
well, it looks like we lost George here for a second. I'll go ahead and just solo while we try to get him back on. But let me know what you guys think. Drop me some questions in the chat. I'll look through them. But who do you think is ultimately behind this? Is it Trump? Is it really Israel acting on its own? Let me know what your thoughts are. The globalists. How do you see them kind of being behind this? George, welcome back. I was just asking the audience, what is Trump's role in all of this? Is Trump, because earlier today, he had publicly warned Israel not to strike so they wouldn't ruin the nuclear talks that were originally scheduled to be this weekend in Oman. That probably won't happen now, but was Trump kind of acting as a good cop, or was he really intending to harbor a peace deal with Iran and is this kind of Netanyahu's way to thwart those peace talks?
Oh yeah, the neocons are trying to thwart the peace talks, and it's really the city of London, but they don't have an intelligence agency, and they don't have, they don't want to directly use the British Air Force, the RAF, so they're going to use Mossad and the Israeli Air Force. So that's who's behind it. It's always been that way.
So we have a super chat, and it says, why do war/money problems happen on Friday and Saturday? So it's technically still Thursday here on the East Coast, but it's definitely Friday. It's definitely Friday in the Middle East. But I think the answer to that question is fairly simple. The markets are closed on the weekends. I mean, what's your take on this, George?
Oh yeah, doing it on off-peak hours has its advantages, right? Yep. As far as kind of staying out of the news cycle a little bit.
Gotcha. But yeah, have you been able to find the slides deck yet?
Yeah, I can't load. I don't have my StreamYard up because I didn't think I needed it, and I can't post it on yours.
Okay, well I'll keep monologuing. Send it to my email, and I'll see if I can present it here, and then you can read through it. But we do have more breaking news. And I will go ahead and share this on screen for you guys and I think this might be what you're looking for. This is a map detailing some of the nuclear sites. Let's go ahead and pull this up here. So, all right. So breaking news, Israeli Air Force strikes Iraq heavy water plant. The Israeli Air Force has reportedly struck the Iraq heavy water production plant. The facility supplies heavy water to the nearby IR/-40 reactor, which is capable of producing 10 to 12 kilograms of plutonium annually from spent nuclear fuel. We've got a map here. This is Iran's key nuclear sites. So Tehran is here in yellow. You've got a research reactor, but a little south of that, you have Natanz. We did hear of a strike in Natanz, so that's another thing to be wary of. There is a nuclear site in Natanz, so there was definitely some kinetic action happening there. I see you've sent over the slide deck. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up here in a sec. But while I'm pulling that up, George, any other thoughts that you want to share with the audience while we kind of buy for time?
Yeah, let me, because that's going to be on slide. I got the Sunni Shia maps on 68. Let me get down to that.
Okay. Bear with us, guys. I think so. I got it. Let me go ahead and pull it up here.
You got the oil map of the region on 77.
All right, it's uploading now, so we should see it soon. I'm going to go ahead and look through some more breaking news while that's loading. Yeah, guys, let me know your thoughts. How do you think this goes? Drop me some of your thoughts in the chat. Do you think that Iran actually hits back this time for real, or do you anticipate more of a theatrical strike like we saw with True Promise 1 and 2? I will read the super chats on the screen. Unfortunately, there are way too many chats to read all at once, but I will read the super chats. I see we've got a super chat here. This is from Age AI. Nice name you got there. AI. We'll pull it up on screen here. It says, read Albert Pike's letter to Mazzini, World War III between Abrahamic religions, all planned to usher in New World Order from the ashes. Scary stuff. Yeah, I have read the letter. But I thought it was debunked, wasn't it? It was supposed to be held like in a museum in England, and they did like a FOIA request on it, and they weren't able to cough it up. You know, granted, they could have just lied and said it wasn't there. I mean, it could certainly have been there. I believe it was originally cited by Guy Carl. He wrote like an early Illuminati book in the early 1900s, but that was the origin of that letter. I mean, have you heard of this letter, George? The Albert Pike letter to Mazzini?
No, but the Christian Broadcasting Network does a lot of stuff about, well, boy, there's so many angles to this, because for the Sunni and the Shia, they're racing to see who attacks Jerusalem first. For them, Jerusalem's called Al-Quds. That's why the IRGC, their overseas operation forces, is called Al-Quds Force, because it's supposed to attack Jerusalem. To fulfill Quranic and Hadith prophecies, they have to, the attack has to emanate from the Khorasan area, where Iran is in West Khorasan, and then they have to attack Israel from the north. So for a long time, Iran was in the lead for the end times prophecy race, because they controlled southern Lebanon and southern Syria. So the Sunnis were trying to catch up. For the Sunnis, the Pashtun in Afghanistan, the Taliban, some people say they're 8 of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. So the goal there was to come from Afghanistan, which is East Khorasan, march through Iran, and then attack Israel from the north. So now the Sunnis just, in end times prophecy.
Who are the Sunnis, though? Because the Sunnis, I mean, you've got the Gulf Arabs, who could be considered the Sunnis. You have, obviously some of the more Wahhabi elements in places like Syria, and
go back to I think it's map 77, but it's map 131 for the nuclear sites.
Okay, so 131 for the nuclear sites. I have 30 pages here.
Oh, did I send you? Oh, okay. I send you a short one. Let me send you another one. I wish I could just present screen on that. It'd be a lot easier.
Okay, so while you're getting that through, I'm going to go ahead and read some more breaking news. So this is from Iranian state media. Spokesperson for the Armed Forces General Staff, the Zionist enemy in America, will pay a heavy price. Iran will give a heavy response to the Zionist regime. So that kind of coincides with what we just read a few moments ago. Oh, I see you've got something on screen. You want to go ahead?
Okay. Yeah, I just took me a little while to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I was hitting the wrong button. Doing stuff on short notice. I have so many different slide decks. If I hit the wrong file, the wrong version of it. Yeah, so this is the nuclear site. And most of these are, they're scattered. Well, you have different, levels of different processes, but they're really worried about the uranium enrichment sites, the ones in Lashkar Abab, Ramadan uranium enrichment, and outside of Tehran. You have a uranium purification site, more down south because they need more water. So anyway, most of those sites, there's a whole bunch of them. Most of those, here's a simpler map. Most, the enrichment sites are really, really super deep underground. And that's why I was like, it would take only really the United States could really do that. And under that scenario, that that the Russians and Chinese would have their advanced air defense systems in there, because what was stealth decades ago may or may not be stealth today. Because now, ever since that F-117 got knocked down in Kosovo years ago, the weakness is once the planes open up their bomb bay doors, they leave a radar signature. So the trick is to keep on bouncing different radars off of it on different electromagnetic wave spectrums, and then see if they can catch them when they're opening up their bomb bay doors, and then lock onto them and fire a missile. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, Iran didn't have any IADs, but since then, several years ago, the Russians sent their S-300s. But I'm just going to go way out on a bet and say for this one, they would have had their S-400s and 500s sent in. Of course, it's going to take Russians to operate those things. Also, the Chinese will be there because they're going to want to test out their equipment too. I mean, everybody does this. So for the very fact that they didn't really go near where the nuclear sites were, they went straight to they don't have the air power to go straight for the nuclear sites. So they did a decapitation strike.
So we do have breaking news. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Yeah. More breaking news coming in. So this is from an Iran military spokesperson. Israel's attacks were aided by the U.S. They will pay a heavy price and should expect a severe response from Iran's armed forces. Now, this is another piece of breaking news here. So this is from the Wall Street Journal. It says President Trump reportedly told Israel not to strike Iran. So we're getting conflicting reports. Iranian sources are saying that the U.S. aided Israel in the attack, while the Wall Street Journal is saying quite the contrary, or at least President Trump wasn't and was not on board with the strike. Which one do we make? How do we make sense of this, George?
Oh, the government is so big. I don't think. I think the deep state does it without telling Trump. I don't think Trump. Like I've been talking about all year long, nobody on Trump's team knows anything about the sea power versus land power grand strategies. Otherwise, Kellogg would have never floated his ridiculous peace plan by. So obviously the people that do know it aren't telling them. So I think that Trump is just isolated and isn't told anything. And I think the deep state operates on its own, but it's been like that since Kennedy.
What's his next move? What's Trump's next move now? Now that he's pretty much pushed into this Iran war. Now, what does he do now from here on out?
Oh, I mean, what they're trying to get him to do. They're trying to what the neocons or globalists are trying to do is get him to send another $40 billion to Ukraine, have Israel attack Iran, which just happened, support Israel and make Israel great again instead of make America great again, and then add deeper sanctions to Russia. That's the quadruple negative that's the box that they're trying to put him in. So right. He has to try to stay out of that box, otherwise he loses his base. But what the neocons are going to try to do is paint him into a corner and say that, well, he lost Ukraine, Iran has nukes, and the economy collapsed all on his watch. That's the rock in the hard place they're trying to put him.
Right. So we have a super chat here. This is from H&R Australia. Trump has to say he did not publicly. So H&R does he doesn't believe the Trump narrative there. Let's go ahead and we have some more breaking news. This is from Zero Hedge. Israel fully coordinated with Washington on Iran. Israeli official tells Israel public broadcaster Khan. So this is from the horse's mouth directly. But I mean, much to your point, the bureaucracy is vast and wide. So, I mean, who really knows? Let me know your thoughts, guys, in the chat. Let me know if you think that Trump was in on it or not. But great super chat here. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, George. Go ahead and finish your thoughts on the nuclear sites in Iran, and I'll pop back in whenever we see more breaking news pop up on the screen.
When it comes to that kind of stuff, I mean, even Ben Rhodes with Obama just called it the blob because no president really controls it. So I really don't think he's in the loop. He might suspect it's happening, but I seriously doubt that they would even tell him.
I see. So we have footage now. This is from, let's go ahead and, this is from Washington, D.C. So it says security fencing has begun going up in the Israeli embassy. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of this footage. Let's pull this out. And let's go ahead and see what we've got going on in D.C. 1 second. We're doing this on the fly, guys, so I appreciate the patience. All right, so security fencing is going up and police presence is increasing outside the Israeli embassy. Let's see what's going on. So you got some there. All right, so by the way, did you hear about this cyber attack that happened earlier today with all of these cloud services like AWS and Google Cloud Platform and yada, yada, yada?
No, I was tracking something else.
Yeah. So you had this collective power outage with all the major cloud services today on the same day or within hours of the Iran strike. Is that a coincidence in your eyes, or could this have been a warning strike from Iran, a cyber attack from Iran to kind of send a message to not move ahead with the strike? Although we did move ahead, or Israel moved ahead with the strike. What do you make of that? Is that connected? Could that be connected?
I mean, the old adage is that there's no such thing as coincidences. If they saw activity of the Israeli Air Force on satellite, prepping for an attack, yeah, they might try to do some kind of cyber attack to be just to let Washington know that they're tracking it. Right. Does it actually stop the attack? No, but it's just for them to send a message that, yeah, we know what you're doing.
And if that was a warning from Iran or some other foreign intelligence aids, or not intelligence, but for some sort of foreign entity, and we went against the warning, the U.S. and Israel, that is, in striking Iran, does this portend to more cyber attacks then? Was that just a taste of what we can anticipate now moving forward?
Oh, I mean, there's been reports out that we have so many different Chinese components that our electric grid is really severely compromised. I mean, my partner Stuart Turley on Energy Newsbeat's been covering that a lot this year. So if they have backdoor chips into the power grid, the guess is that they can shut it down anytime they want. Lieutenant General Flynn posted out on X the other day that they think that they have up to 300,000 illegal Chinese, migrants in the United States. So that's actually a small army. Now, I also know that a lot of the at one of the big server facilities, people were caught speaking in Chinese in some of the server rooms that also house a lot of the government servers. So you actually have to, I won't say the name of the company or anything like that were involved, but you wonder how much, Verizon, AT&T, or Amazon Web Services is compromised by people that came over here, got electrical engineering degrees and computer science degrees in the U.S. colleges, went to work for these companies, but they're really Chinese operatives. There's a lot more of that going on than, I personally know of a few examples of that. You would have to think that I would just know a very, very small percentage of what's really going on. So it's probably more widespread than people would want to admit, is my guess.
Understood.
So yeah, if this does escalate and you go into a major power outage, that could cause tremendous lot of social incohesion at a time where we already took in 40 million people over the last few decades.
Yes, very true. Go ahead.
Yeah, Tom Homan and my friends that are in DHS talk about that they think Mexico is a narco state, and they've really compromised our border officials and our whole southern border. So, and the different cartel entities have been operating in the United States for a long time. They've always traded, the Colombian cartels have always traded cocaine for opium in West Africa and traded in blood diamonds. That's been going on for decades. They use each other's gang members or terrorist organizations to move their goods either into Europe or into the United States. But they also trade a lot of information as far as terrorist operations goes. So that's been going on since the Escobar days, but it's gotten much worse since the global war on terror. So there could be a lot of violent extremist organizations working within the United States, but then you have to always remember, whenever when Trump was talking about, the West started ISIS, people were like, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. No, people need to go back and read T.E. Lawrence's 7 Pillars of Wisdom, where the British have always worked with the Sunnis, and the British were, they discovered the oil fields in Iran back in the British petroleum days, and they've been rigging the elections over there for the whole entire 20th century. I mean, Mossadegh in 54 is the last time, but they're always trying to destabilize Iran because it's such a pivotal area, not only because it's oil rich. If you could put my other map back up real quick.
Right. I just wanted to show the audience. Oil WTI has now spiked up to $77. That's $9 up from the close earlier today at 4 p.m. Eastern. So this is kicking into high gear. But let's go ahead and kick things back.
So if you just look at this map, Iran is in between the Caspian Sea and the Persian Gulf. You have the Strait of Hormuz right here. That's, they can easily shut that down. It's also the gap between the Caspian Sea, through Azerbaijan and Georgia, the gateway to the Black Sea. What's not in the map is, of course, the distance between the Caspian Sea and the Persian Gulf and the Mediterranean Sea, and then on the other side of Saudi Arabia is the Red Sea. So Iran it's next to maritime choke points, and it's a major terrestrial land bridge choke point.
Right.
So this is because the Russians are trying to run the north-south trade corridor through Azerbaijan down to either Bandar Abbas and Chabahar Strait. Yeah, this map is from Stratfor, by the way. Chabahar Strait would be right about where the A is, or the T, Chabahar port. And they're building railroads that go through Azerbaijan and through Turkmenistan down to Zahedan and Kash down to Chabahar port. The idea was then to ship oil and LNG over to Gujarat in India, but if India can get Baluchistan and Sindh province to break away from declare their independence from Pakistan, what they ideally want is to run a railroad and pipelines straight through what is now southern Pakistan. These lines were arbitrarily brought up by the British in 1947 when they left the British Raj. This used to be all open connected territory. Also, the Chinese with the CPEC, Chinese Pakistan Economic Corridor, they're building highways and railroads over the Karakum Mountains, in the Himalayas, down through Pakistan to Gwadar Port. So it's both the Chinese, the Indians, and Russians are competing for that space, and of course, the Western financial elites don't want any of those corridors completed. So they want as much chaos in this area as possible. So that's why I'm saying everybody is working with everybody when it comes to the different separatist groups and violent extremist organizations. It's a big mess.
I see. Big breaking news here. Iran's supreme leader is alive, security sources tell Reuters. So he was among the group of people that was targeted, obviously. It seems like he's alive, according to Iran. See what else we got here. What does this portend to the Ukraine war? I mean, obviously we can extrapolate out higher energy prices. You've talked about that before, but does this change the outlook of the Ukraine war? Does the West now have to focus more on Iran as opposed to Russia? And does Russia in effect benefit?
Yeah, I mean, forget about any kind of peace deal. I mean, I was even saying that Putin's real war is with the Western financial community anyway, which is why I always thought the Kellogg plan was totally ridiculous. Now it's even more ridiculous because the neocons want to continue the war because they think the Russian economy is going to collapse any day now. But, you've had Martin Armstrong on several times, and he's on other shows talking about it's going to be a race between who collapses first, probably Japan, because they're 260% over their debt to GDP ratio. England's, I think, is about 124% over debt over GDP. And most European countries are sitting around between 95 and 105. The United States, I think, is about 124 also, just off the top of my head. So the West is doing this, and the United States spent, between trying to transform America to a single party socialist state with welfare spending and the global war on terror, we spent $30 trillion combined on trying to break apart Russia, and it hasn't broken apart yet.
Right. So we do have breaking news. New strikes have been reported. Additional strikes reported on Iranian capital, Tehran. This is fresh new footage. Let's go ahead and take a look. See the remnants of it, the smoke beyond the trees over there. So this is in the morning time, not in the nighttime. So this is fairly raw. And we also have breaking news as well. Mossad conducted a covert sabotage operation inside Iran to sabotage its long-range missile systems and air defenses. So there you go, guys. Let's go ahead and take it back to you, George.
Oh, I'm just glancing through my maps here. Yeah, there has always been a large Jewish population in Iran. A lot of them went back to Israel, but they go back and forth. So there's a lot of native Farsi speakers that also speak Hebrew. That's how they're able to blend in so well. That's how they're able to pull this off. So yeah, they could. I would need more information on how they try to disable some of the air defense systems.
Well, they have shown signs of sophistication before, the Mossad has. Obviously, with the pager strikes, whether you buy the official story that they set up these shell companies within shell companies in Hungary or whatever, or whether or not they were, these pagers had like a back door in them to explode. I mean, whatever the case may be, it does take a very sophisticated operation to pull something like that off. And clearly, disabling Iran's missile defense system from within would be in line with that, wouldn't it?
Well, a lot of that stuff would be hardwired.
Hmm.
So you can't interfere with it from, electronically. Or, I mean, one would hope that most of the stuff would be hardwired, but they should. I thought Russia would have put in a lot more IADs, so it's not like you would really need to knock out a lot of them to make a difference. But of course, that would just be speculation. There's, they're not going to advertise what they have and where they have it. But yeah, it's the Mossad is always well, the Sephardics can blend in very well in that area.
Yeah. So more breaking news, another explosion at Natan's nuclear facility. So we saw one explosion on the initial strike. Now we're seeing another, we're hearing talks about another explosion at that nuclear facility. So these are coming. These are unending, it seems. I believe the official word from Israel is that these will continue for the next several days, if not weeks.
Yeah, I thought they would have a little bit stronger of a defense, but yeah, I don't know how many F-35s that they have, but they don't have the capacity to do large scale strikes. So yeah, they can't do a massive bombing like the United States can around the clock. But yeah, they certainly can hit independent.
Is there George? Is there any scenario where the U.S. doesn't come to Israel's aid in all this? Because clearly, there's no way. I can't fathom of a way that Israel would go ahead and strike Iran unilaterally without guarantees from the U.S. beforehand. Like they would have had to have some sort of guarantee from the U.S., even if it wasn't like explicit kinetic assistance, intelligence sharing, things like that. I mean, didn't something have to be on the table for them to go along with something like this?
Well, it's multi-layered. All the different intelligence agencies work with all the different intelligence agencies, and the Mossad, MI6, CIA relationship has been around since the days of Pollard, obviously. But the big lobby is the Israeli lobby in our Congress. So it's going to be people like Lindsey Graham and the Christian Zionists like Josh Hawley and Tom Cotton that are going to demand that we help Israel. And then that's going to be the pressure to get Trump to go ahead and sign off on that. But if that happens, yeah, that's a major escalation, and it's going to be very it'll be interesting to see what Putin does, because forget about peace in Ukraine now. Everything is off the table. It's going to be to stop escalation, because Putin, it's not going to stop until the Bank of England is bankrupted. That's Putin and Xi's goal now. If they were going to stop short of that last month, forget about that now. They're going to be trying to destabilize Russia. I mean, I'm really just looking at an escalation here, because
on both fronts, on the Middle Eastern front as well as the Eastern European front.
Right, because if Russia doesn't want to play into the hands of the neocons saying they're going to invade and march to Berlin any minute now. They're going to be in Paris like in a month. They've been saying that.
Mm-hmm.
So Russia doesn't want to play into that. Plus, we had the ethnic map of Ukraine up last time. Russia only wants the Russian-speaking areas, which happens to be along the coast anyway. They're going to want to stay out of any. They're not going to want to get into Poland. I mean, they're not going to want to get bogged down in any quagmire. Their goal is to get the Eurasian Economic Union functional and get it merged with ASEAN with overland logistical supply routes. Everything to them, anything other than that goal for autarky is a distraction. So what's the West strategy? To disrupt these overland logistical supply route strategies as much as possible by starting, a war right where the INSTC and the CPAC logistical supply routes are, right where the oil and gas and plus you have a lot of minerals in Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan that they also want too. And Afghanistan is still full of rare earth minerals. So it's to be if we can't have it, it's to be as disruptive in that area to keep Russia and China from extracting that also. So that's the game there. And just everything works in levels, because at the regional level, you're talking about ethnic, religious, and linguistic rivalries that are historic. The powers around them, the regional powers, work with the different sides of those things going on. And then at the superpower level, they're also working those same rivalries against each other's.
So for those who may have not watched our first interview where you laid all this out, what is a supra power level?
Oh, well, you just have superpower, major powers, regional powers.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought you meant like
and the vassal states.
Different categories of elites. Gotcha. All right. So we have breaking news. This sheds more detail into the coordination of the strike between Israel and the United States. Israeli official told the Jerusalem Post, quote unquote, "We presented the American administration with evidence of Iran's breakthrough toward a nuclear bomb. There was full and complete coordination with the Americans." So you have a number of Israeli officials really trying to hammer home this point that there was coordination with America, and Iran has also said a similar thing as well. So do we see, when do you anticipate a strike on military bases, on U.S. military bases within?
I just want to make the distinction. America is a big place and Washington, D.C. is a place. Nothing on earth is a monolith. There's factions operating within these areas. So when they say America did it, oh yeah, I absolutely guarantee that Americans are feeding them information. I'll guarantee it. But the thing is, I really seriously doubt Trump is right in on any of this, because they're trying to get Trump into that 4 negative box. Keep on funding Ukraine, bomb Iran, support Israel, more sanctions on Russia. They're trying to force him into that. So now, of course, Israel would say the Americans did it because they're trying to force Trump's hand. I would imagine that Trump is going ballistic right now because he's been telling Netanyahu not to do this. So there's a lot of people are going to be very, very angry. There's I think the Jimmy Dore show had a montage of Trump back in December and January say, "I'm going to end the war in Ukraine in the first day," which I was talking on Energy Newsbeat. That whole thing is absurd, because the war is between the banking community and trying to break apart Russia. Ever since Jeffrey Sachs was talking about that today, and he was at the Kennedy School with Brzezinski and Kissinger and those people. He knows them personally. I just read about them in books. So that's always been going on.
Okay, more breaking news. Ali Shamkhani, senior advisor to Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, seriously injured in airstrike on his residence in Tehran. I want to take it back to Russia and China here, because they do have, they are the trifecta: Iran, Russia, and China. Do we start to see either Russia or both Russia and China join Iran in whatever may transpire from here? Do they get involved?
Oh yeah, well, they're going to send in more IADs if they haven't already. It's
what are IADs?
Oh, integrated air defense system. So you have radar units connected to surface to air missile sites. So if they're coming in to knock those out, with aircraft, well, they used to fly right at them, and then during the Vietnam days, the wild weasels would try to avoid them, and then a second would come in and lock on to their radar units and try to knock them out without getting shot down. Now they're using the radar antennas farther away from the actual SAMs, and they're turning on and off different ones so they can't target them. But usually you want to knock out the different radar units and the actual rocket launchers also, and then go on and attack whatever targets that you want to hit. So you want to knock out the IADs first. It's just the ways of knocking them out and using stealth bombers or fighter jets have a big advantage because the radars have lots of trouble even detecting them, let alone locking on, until they open up the bomb bay doors. But then it's typically too late. But you want to use a bigger array of antennas working with different electromagnetic rays on the spectrum in order to try to get that lucky shot kind of a thing.
I see.
Now, I don't know how sophisticated the units that Iran has, because the S-500s are way more. I know Iran got the S-300 several years ago, and the U.S. used to fly over Iran all the time with impunity, even in an F-16s, because Iran didn't have any IADs. But that changed a few years ago. The S-300s are good enough to take out F-16s, but the F-35s, that's a stealth aircraft, and the B-2s. So they can't take out those. It'll be interesting to see if the S-500s can, with more sophisticated array of different radars.
Gotcha.
That's the test there.
Right. More breaking news. This is from the AP and the Wall Street Journal. So this is from Supreme Leader Khamenei. It says Iran Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei just promised Israel will face severe punishment, as reports confirm Ali Shamkhani, Iran's lead nuclear negotiator, was severely injured in the airstrikes on his home. IAEA chief Rafael Grossi confirmed the Natanz nuclear site was hit, with the agency monitoring radiation levels, calling the situation deeply concerning. Iranian state TV is airing footage of crowds chanting death to Israel and death to America, despite the U.S. stating Israel acted unilaterally. The strikes come days before Sunday's planned U.S.-Iran nuclear talks in Oman, with Iran's top negotiator hospitalized and nuclear sites burning. Those talks are certainly dead. From harsh response to severe punishment, Khamenei's escalating rhetoric. All right, yeah. So looks like we're not going to get any negotiations this weekend, clearly. And we're hearing some of this worrying tone coming out of Iran. So I guess we'll see what happens within the next several days. Go ahead.
Yeah, put the map back up on the screen so people know where Natanz is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's right in the middle. South of, I don't know. Oh yeah, you can see my cursor.
Yep.
Yeah, Natanz is right there. It's directly below
south of Tehran.
Yeah, a couple hours south, and that's all desert. When you fly over it at night, you don't see any lights. You'll see some oil flares every now and then, but you don't see any lights out there. It's really barren out there.
I see. Well, I think the news has started to kind of simmer down a bit. I've got this really bad toothache, so I've got to get some rest. But I don't mean to bitch and moan, but I need to take some pain meds right now. I can't really talk for much longer here, George. But thank you so much for your time. I've got to split. We'll continue to monitor the situation as things transpire. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up here?
Oh no, it's just this was done on purpose to scuttle all the peace deals and to escalate it. So yeah, it's going to escalate it. And again, the neocons still think that the Russian economy is going to collapse. So really, this is a race to see who collapses first.
Yeah, and I haven't seen anyone make the connection between the Ukraine theater and the Iran theater until you have. So this is some very. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's Spikeman's rimland theory against. Yeah, George Kennan in 47, he wrote the long telegram about that really started the strategies of containment, and it's based on Spikeman's work. Just to give you, I know you got a toothache, but Mahan started the sea power versus land power grand strategies because that came out of the colonial East India Company rivalries. His big thing was you use naval power to stop countries from trading because you don't want to turn production into wealth, and then use that to rebuild your economy and your military. So Spikeman was saying, well, Russia's got the most oil and gas with the advent of the train. Now they can move energy, minerals, agricultural commodities, trade that for German industrial goods, and then they'll economically develop, militarily develop. So Mackinder's theory was a heartland theory of how they were going to branch out. When they branch out, it's really the natural gas network that is really makes the heartland connect to all the coastal industrial rimland strategies. Spikeman comes in the 30s and 40s at Yale. He was a Dutch. He had maritime experience going back and forth to the British East Indies. He said we have to, instead of concentrating on Eastern Europe like Mackinder was focusing on, he's like, we need to cover all the ports and rimland area in Eurasia. So that's how Kennan's coastal power center strategy was formed, the Truman Doctrine, and then ultimately the domino theory, because if Russia takes over Southeast Asia and all of Asia, then we won't have access to, well, all those countries that the East India companies were in. We can leave it there. But the history of this is, if you know the books, you can figure out what the different strategies are from the different, from the different countries. You have a measure of predictability. If you don't know this body of literature, then everything just happens at random.
Right.
And none of this is at random.
Yeah. You need a coherent model of reality too.
Yeah. Well, I sent you that 100-page Sea Power last week. I don't know if you downloaded it in time because it would have deleted after.
Oh, I'll have to check, but
I'll send it again because it would have deleted after a few days.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much for coming on, my friend. Tell us where people can find you if they want to see more of your work.
Oh, they can hit me up on LinkedIn. I don't really do a lot of social media.
Okay. I have your Telegram down below if that's okay.
Oh yeah, that's fine. I have select documents on that. And I know they're dense reads, but it's faster for them just to read that stuff rather than have each individual keep on asking me over and over again. Because then people, it's written so it controls for one variable at once.
Mm-hmm.
If people get confused, well, what happens with this person? Well, they're going to react that way. Then people get really confused. You need to control for one variable. I also have another Telegram channel that has some basic level introduction to Mahan Mackinder theories. There's, people can Google that stuff on YouTube and watch it, or Eurasian Atlanticist versus Eurasianist theories. It's the same thing as sea power versus land power. They just call it a different name, but it's like the same thing.
Understood. Well, thank you so much for coming on, especially on short notice. Guys, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this coverage. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below if you got value out of it. Great. Let me know what you agreed with. Let me know what you disagreed on as well. I do, in fact, read the comments. So a lot of this stuff is up in the air. I mean, we'll see how it plays out, but it's not looking good if you're a fan for peace.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go over, if we get time to go over more of the oil fields, because I got all these oil field maps that we didn't go over. Because
we'll figure out time in the future to look over it. All right. Great. Thanks, guys, for watching. Like, subscribe, share this video out with your friends, do all the YouTube stuff, and I will catch you later. Bye.